The cause of actor Bob Saget's death has been determined as head trauma. Saget hit the back of his head on something and must have thought nothing of it. And he later died in his Florida hotel room. The night before Saget died, the 65-year-old performed a comedy show in Jacksonville. And when his family didn't hear from him, they requested a wellness check. And on January 9th, police found him dead, lying on his back. Medical examiners say there was no evidence of drug use or foul play.
That being said, there's still a lot of questions about the exact cause and manner, even if there was a blow to the head and no drugs or alcohol were involved. Again, we still don't know exactly what happened and what could have happened and what could have therefore been prevented. So to start talking a little bit more about this in very general terms, happy to have Dr. Mark Alberts, the chief of neurology at Hartford Hospital, joining us this morning. Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. How are you today?
Great, Tim. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes. And we always want to just impress upon our viewers that, of course, we have no connection to this case. There's a lot of information we don't know. But why don't we start there? What other questions do you have with your experience in neurology based on the little that we do know about his death?
Right. I would want to know, as a physician, what other medical issues Bob may have had. For example, was he taking blood thinners? Did he have a prior history of strokes or falls, things like that? Something that would have increased what we call our index of suspicion that there may be something worrisome going on. Because we all bump our heads a little bit every day, every week, and we don't want to alarm people that they need to go to the hospital with every little bump on the head. And again, his case raises more questions than answers at this point.
Yeah, and it's a good point, Jim. You don't want to cause undue risk. But I do want to talk about those sort of bolt of lightning cases. What does happen in the rare cases that maybe somebody bumps their head, otherwise thinks nothing of it, but winds up suffering a fatal injury that doesn't make itself known for a few hours?
Yeah, I mean, you can have damage to the blood vessels in your brain from banging your head. And then if those blood vessels get torn or squinched too much, it can cause bleeding in the brain, particularly if the person or if the patient has another risk factor for bleeding, like they're taking a blood thinner for another disease, something like that. But again, his case is very unusual because that type of bleeding in the brain usually would occur and get worse over many hours, if not even days. So to have him go to bed being what we presume is normal, and then he never wakes up again, that's distinctly unusual in my opinion.
Okay, at least that is something. And doctor, as you were saying that, just got an email in from a viewer named Steve Devaney who said, I'm on blood thinners. They told me if I fall or hit my head, I had to go to the ER. Is that general good medical advice? Or more specifically, are there certain symptoms you should be looking out for when you or somebody else hits their head that says, okay, we need to get checked out?
Yeah, great question, Tim. So not everybody who hits their head has the same type of injury, right? If you're in a car accident going 60 miles an hour and you hit your head on the windshield, that's a high impact injury. That's something very worrisome. On the other hand, if you just very gently walk into a door and it's lasts a second and there's no real injury, that's sort of at the different end of the spectrum. Having said that, I think you need a big dose of common sense, and it's always a good idea in those cases where patients are on a blood thinner for them to call their primary care physician, explain what happened, explain how they're feeling, and then let them parse things out, because we don't, again, want everybody running to the ED every time they bump their head.
And you got into this a little bit before. In terms of a time window that you want to look for before you can say, okay, I think everything's all right, how long would it normally take before you would be reasonably assured somebody did not suffer something inside their head that would cause more attention after a head injury?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the longer you go after a head injury, the more confident you are, especially, and this is the key thing, if the patient is normal. They're not having a bad headache. They're awake and alert. They're walking and talking normally, because that's what we look for in the hospital for in terms of signs that things are going wrong. They have a worsening headache, a slurred speech, they're sleeping, they have weakness or numbness. Those are all worrisome symptoms. And in that case, then you should go to the hospital right away and seek medical care.
It does sound like a lot of common sense will go a long, long way with a lot of this, Doctor. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and give us some of your knowledge. We do appreciate it.